Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Landscaping to the Point with my special guest hosts, Josh and JC here. Again, we are here. We are talking some great topics today. Neither of these guys kind of know what we're talking about sometimes, but you know what? I like to grab them off of anywhere and just make them talk. So today's topic, we're going to talk about our first topic today is paying yourself. Do you write yourself a check? Or do you business withdraw your money? How do you do it? And we're going to go ahead and we're going to let the expert talk, our little ghost boy down here, Josh. Josh, you got the floor on this one because I think you're so much more knowledgeable than me, I guess, on this.
I don't know about that. I don't know
You
about
you
that.
know more. Come on.
I've made a lot of mistakes. So yeah, I mean my knowledge comes from the amount of mistakes I've made. I'm still learning. Um so payment. This is gonna I feel like this is like a touchy subject because everybody's gonna have a different opinion on this. But for me personally, so when I started, I took what was called owner's draws. Essentially you have your personal account, which is under your name, and then you have your business account, which whether you're a sole proprietor, LLC, S corp, you should still have a separate account for all that stuff for the business. And then when you go out to McDonald's or whatnot, you have your account to pay your bills out of, your personal bills. I took what was owner's draws, which was at the end of the month. I took what I needed, and when I took the deduction out of the bank or I made the transfer, I would mark it on the notes, owner's draw, payroll, salary, Josh. uh, this went on for a year or two. My accountant was actually the one that was like, all right, we got to stop that. You're to a point now where like you can't do that as much. I was also doing that when I was running as a sole proprietor. And I was actually screwing myself because the tax rate was a little bit higher on that. As of today, what I do, and even as of 4 years ago, I have myself on salary. And when I started doing that, I was a little nervous to put a number to my salary for the year because it felt like it put a lot of pressure. Like, do you pay yourself 100 grand? Do you pay yourself 20 grand? Like, what do you do? What do you do? And then like listening to, just talking to a lot of guys and knowing what I've known in the past from business owners in different industries, I decided to put myself on a salary for about $20,000 a year. Doesn't sound like much, but at the end of the day, the 20,000 was enough to just pay my baseline minimum bills. And I knew every week that was there, no matter what that transfer went through. At the time, I was using paychecks, and I don't recommend paychecks to anyone. But I was using paychecks, so I ran it through automated. I had my payroll taxes deducted out of that, my Social Security, my Fed, everything, my state, everything came out of there. And then what I would do is at the end of each month or the end of each quarter, whichever was better, I would pay myself dividends. So I'm using fictitious numbers here. So if I was paying myself 20,000 salary, and again, I said 20,000. That was actually the number, that wasn't fictitious. If I was to have gone 80,000, then I have to make sure that I can come up with that plus pay guys or a helper the difference. It's a lot of pressure, but I know if I just add up what my personal bills cost, I can get an idea of what I have to pay myself. Not going out to eat, not buying bottles of beer, or going out, drinking or whatever. It's just to pay my, at the time, my rent, cable bill, car insurance, stuff like that. And then what you do is you find a percentage of, if your company was going to make so much profit per month and you had it allotted and there was extra left over, and maybe you have an extra 10 grand left over. Guess what? Now that 10 grand goes into my pocket. And because of the way my company's structured, I'm on a lower tax bracket, so I wouldn't pay as much taxes on those dividends. So if I paid myself 20 grand a year, 4 quarters, 10 quarters a year, 40 grand, $60,000 a year. So that would be how I broke it up. But I think you should definitely, just to get in the hang of things, it's to find a way to pay yourself a minimum. And again, it goes back to the whole know your numbers. You definitely have to know what your company's bringing in. You have to be able to do projections. Projections are, hey, I'm going to have 83 customers this year guaranteed, or this is what I'm aiming towards by April 19th. This is what I'm going to make. This is how much I can afford to pay myself. Don't overpay yourself. Even when you get an accountant, your accountant's going to say, based off the industry, based off your title, whether you're president, vice president, secretary, treasurer of your company, it has to be a realistic wage. Like, you're not going to go, okay, I'm going to pay myself 300 grand to be the head lawnmower of Carvin Green Company. But out the gate, I mean, owner's draws are fine. I would just keep very tight books and keep things separate. I got hit. I think the my first year in business, I think I made my very first year not even trying because I had gotten laid off from another job. I still had the unemployment. I think I made like shit 70 grand or something. And then I got a fucking tax bill for like 23,000. I was like, what? And I was a sole prop and I didn't know that. So, and I didn't really keep the books tight because at that point it was kind of just throwing things in the air, figuring direction. The next year I really separated things where like I had the business account, I had my personal account, and I made sure I wrote myself checks. So it's a, Josh Carvin and the subject payroll, and whether it was $50 or $100, you transferred it over. But definitely, start owner's draws. But then when you get to the point where you have consistent revenue, meaning you have, so many mowing customers, try to throw yourself a salary because it makes it easier to add to that because you can always do bonus incentives. And we even do that now. It's like for snow, I give myself bonus incentives where like if I close an account, we make 2 payments are made on the account, I get a percentage of what the actual net worth of that account is. At the end of the year, if there's no complaints or no major issues or damages, I get a bonus for the snow management as well. So I make a lot of my money on the snow side as far as like incentives.
So do you now? It goes back to where you're talking more of like S corp and LLC. Are you an S corp or are you still kind of like an LLC? I mean, a lot of people are kind of LLCs, and I agree. Definitely doing an LLC right off the bat is definitely something you should do.
I jumped right into incorporated S corp. I never went the LLC way. LLC has its advantages. I mean, they're pretty similar in how the structures are made. But just for what I had, and what I have, I'm more protected as an S corp through an incorporation.
Okay.
And I definitely like when you get to the point, let's call it no matter where you are. Let's say you get to $100,000 in revenue, no matter where you are in right. Any state or any part of this country. Once you get to $100,000 in revenue, I highly suggest structuring your company to either an LLC, and you can do an LLC and you can file as an S corp or C corp. You're not going to file as a C corp. C corp's more for like multi-billion-dollar businesses. Typically, it's LLC. Structured as an S corp or an incorporation. In Massachusetts, I had reasons for it, and I was, obviously I was encouraged by the accountants, and that's the reason why I pay accountants. They know the shit I don't. I the shit I know is because I pick their brains and I ask a million questions. So I pay to have this stuff done. I paid to have I think it only costs you probably like $50 on LegalZoom to start the corporation. But for me, again, I always talk about then liability. So if you hire an accountant or a CPA to structure your company and something goes wrong with how that's structured, you then the liability, which now it's on that third party administrator, which is your accountant or whoever set that up, because they have to put their name on that. Now, if you do it and you mess up, guess what? You're up shit's creek for a lot of taxes and a lot of penalties. And for anybody in Massachusetts listening that's in business, you know how expensive Massachusetts can be because they do not play. OBAC taxes in Massachusetts, it's worse than having like a high interest credit card. It's ridiculous.
What's that thing they say? There's only 2 things in life that's guaranteed: death and paying taxes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But yeah, I am, to answer the question. So I am S corp, structured as an incorporation.
Okay. So JC, what about yourself? I mean, I know you're like a part-time business. So do you do the same thing?
Yeah, I'll start off by saying I'm still making a lot of mistakes, but like Josh says, you learn from them. But so sole proprietorship, DBA, is how I'm doing my business. When I first started off, I had no idea what was going on, and I think that's like what Josh was saying is very important for people that have no business experience. When you're starting off a business, like you're going to screw up. So having an accountant, I don't have my own, but having an accountant, I think if you're going to go into this full time, is you have to play it right by the books. But going back to the way I've done things or do things, obviously open up a business account, separate that from your personal finances, making sure that you kind of manage things the right way. Initially, I was doing owner withdrawals in a sense where I was taking, I was paying myself. There's no other reason why you're doing a business, right? If you're starting off a business, it's to make money, and it's what the goal of it is to kind of make some bucks, right? That's the name of the game. But I was doing with the business withdrawals, and just pay myself kind of randomly at first because I didn't know what was going on. I was basing it on the jobs that I was doing, and I was basing it off of like, you know, how many other properties I gained or how many whatnot. If I was, you know, if I gained 2 or 3 more properties, and I was taking a little more what I needed. But again, it's a side hustle for me. So what I've been doing lately, and for the past maybe 2 years now, it's been my nest egg. So I've just been I haven't been paying myself. Well, I have, but I haven't been like withdrawing myself on a frequent basis because I do have a full-time job, and I base most of my stuff on what I gain from there. So any profits that I make, any money that I make, it's just being saved in my account. And for a day that I need it for something, or if I want to take a trip or want to go on vacation, something like that, like it's something I have. Or if something pops up, you know, big business, personal expense, you know, something happens, I have it there. But I think before you begin, is to have your ducks in line. You know, go and get your paperwork done, do it legitimately, get your business paperwork, make sure you're filing your taxes if you're doing it, if you're making enough revenue, obviously, and no matter what. The way I handle my taxes is I actually include it as a like a secondary income. So I'm not separating my taxes as separate from business from personal. So I'm just kind of adding it because I'm small time, very, very, very small time. But nonetheless, even no matter what size you are, big or small, you have to organize it, and you have to do it the right way, you know, and that way you keep track of what you're doing, and you know how to kind of expand if at some point you want to gravitate away from, you know, constantly doing what you're doing, just kind of making sure you have everything in order so that you don't get scrambled and you're not losing track of how much you're making, right? You can just keep on withdrawing and then realize one day you don't have any money in your account, or you know, your mowers go down, or you need something to fix, you know, whatever. A client kind of cancels on you, and you lose clients and you lose business. So just having a nest egg for me is what works, and that's the way I do it.
Okay, so the thing that it comes down to is always knowing your finances, knowing how your books are, knowing, you know, your numbers really. And if you don't know your numbers, I feel like it always comes back to that, you know. And it's kind of hard. I know over the years, it's something that I always look at the beginning of the year. I always look at how the numbers are per year, because literally numbers change. Everything goes up, everything goes down. So you should continue to have it. So how do you keep track of that, Josh? I mean, I know you said you had a CPA. Do you have him do that on a regular basis, on a quarterly basis, or do you just kind of go through the books on yourself?
The daily business books or the regular business books, essentially they're overseen by me on a week to week, my wife and I. And then the accountant will go through them quarterly. Again, that's just because it's not what I do. Yeah, you know, I can know as much as I know, but he's the expert. That's his area of expertise. So that's why I pay that. Obviously, I do the weekly, you know, to save myself some money. You know, I'm not at that point yet where I need full-time accounting. But you should have a basic knowledge, no matter, like, if you're in year 2 or 3. I'll be honest with you, even year 1, you know, I made a video for somebody at some point with year 1 where it's like, you know, someone had commented on a YouTube video that I was watching about, well, like, how do you figure out numbers if you don't have numbers? At the end of the day, you always have numbers. You know, if you're living in mom and dad's house and you decide you want to cut a lawn, like, factor in, like, okay, what's it cost for your cell phone bill? What's it cost for your meals? You know, what, you know, are your mom and dad charging your rent? You know, there's always some sort of overhead for you to live. Think about that. Think about what it costs you to live as a person and multiply that by 2. And that gives you kind of a baseline of what your company needs to pay you as an employee. Right. So typically, lawn care world, you're going to pay, you know, let's call it, in mass, you're going to pay a minimum of probably $18 to $20 an hour. So you can factor that in as your baseline. That's just what you're paying someone. That's before payroll taxes, markup, padding, any of that stuff. Every year to year, you just pay attention to what those numbers are. I'd say under 250, even on 300K, you still should be able to manage your books pretty efficiently on your own. So you don't have to rush into paying a CPA. I know that the pricing we paid in the past was something like $300 a month. 300 bucks a month to come in and clean up the books and everything. And we put that into the quarter. And it's still, we don't save any money by doing that. It's more efficient for me to sit there and do it, because if I forget something, I lap it in. So then that quarter, it's all in there. He can say, hey, what's this, rather than chasing it down. It might seem like a few bucks, but yeah, I mean, if you just end of the day, like year one, if you go through year one, you can go back and look at your fuel receipts. What did it cost you for fuel? What did it cost you for maintenance? What did it cost you for upkeep? You go around, like, if you're not, and listen, I didn't have insurance my first year in business. I didn't. But I mean, you can go around. I mean, it doesn't cost you anything to get quotes on insurance and all this type of stuff to see what things are going to cost you. And you can kind of budget around that. I mean, we could make a whole episode on trying to figure out numbers. And that's the biggest thing, is guys will say, and this always would piss me off with like the whole influencer and like the hurrah thing on YouTube, is like, guys are like, know your numbers, boys. And it's like, get a little bit more in depth to it. Like, what are you talking about? Like, what are your numbers? Like, there's a lot more that goes into it than just, what you're charging your profit. Like, you gotta, like, if you want to figure out that labor rate, you need to go through what everything costs you for that year prior and multiply that, divide that by the amount of days that you actually work. Don't do that by 365 unless you're running a full year schedule, which none of us really are. You multiply that down by the day, the weeks you're working, by the days and by the hours, and then figure in the days, your operating hours. And that's how you're going to figure out what you need to charge per hour. Just charge basic minimum to even keep your company afloat. And you'll be surprised. I think you'll be surprised at how low that number is. Even with maybe a couple of notes and stuff, you'll realize that, holy shit, maybe that number's only around like, $37 an hour. And you can mark that up, 50%, and then make some profit on that, and then consider, you're marking a 50%, this tax is on that profit. So, if you're a sole proprietor, I think it's what, 33% is what you're being taxed on. And just kind of jumping around all over here, just to kind of back up to the what we talked about prior. When you're looking at your numbers, right, it's sole proprietor, I can almost guarantee you're paying more money to make more money being a sole proprietor than you are actually structuring. Now, again, in Massachusetts, it cost me with an accountant $500 to structure my company, and then it cost me $475 a year for excise tax and mass to be a corporation. There's no state taxes through the company. I pay state taxes on a personal level, right? So it gets filtered down. It's called a pass-through entity. That first year that I told you that I paid like $17,000 in taxes, income taxes, as a sole proprietor, that was based off like $100K or something like that, $150K. 2 years later, I did $275,000. I was shitting my pants thinking that my tax bill was going to be like 30-40 grand. My tax bill was lower than when I made that 150 grand. I was in awe. And now I saw what they talk about, those corporate loopholes, which obviously, you don't want Amazon to get them at $1 billion increments. You want the small guy to get them. So just to kind of speed up and get back on track here, you're paying more money to operate as a sole operator, at least in Massachusetts, than you are to actually structure. And there's not a lot involved when you're under like $1 million mark to actually structure your company and keep your profits to yourself. But yeah, as far as that, no, your numbers, let's keep a paper trail. Keep a simple paper trail. If you don't have overhead, shopping that stuff, figure out, what do you pay for rent? What do you pay for car insurance? Like, what's your entertainment? Like, if you don't have a spreadsheet, then we got a whole nother issue. Like, you got to figure out what your personal expenses are, and then you can figure it out from there. I don't even know if that answered the question, but
no, it does, because I do that exact same thing. That is, I like talking about keeping your personal and your business expenses. I treat it like a different person. Like I'm Jensen here on my personal life, and I'm Jensen doing my part-time business. I completely keep them separated. But the question I wanted to ask you, Josh, is, I think this could be a whole nother segment, or even like a forum, but I wish there was a top 10 list of things that you need to do. Like, hey, I woke up this morning, I decided to start a business. What do I need to do to legitimize it correctly, as far as organization with books, numbers, what I need to file, what legal documents do I need, what do I need to look for on legalzoom.com or whatever. Those types of things to kind of get you started. Now, obviously, yeah, it's great. Get out there, start working, you know, make money the way you can, but you're not going to be too successful if you don't have those correct resources in line. And what would you suggest? Like maybe, I don't know, maybe let's cut it down to the top 3 things when you first wake up and decide, hey, I'm going to start a business today. What are the things on paper that you think you need to do?
I'd say, one, do you know anything about the industry that you're going to start the business in? Because that's a big factor. And for this industry in particular, I think this is an industry, not everyone, so don't get offended and fucking cry about this when I make the comment. I think a lot of people fall into this industry as like a default where like they lose a job in a certain sector and you're like, you know what, I'm going to cut lawns for a little bit just to supplement the income. And then they end up liking it and loving it. And you know, there's so many different avenues that grow, like mowing lawns for a lot of people is the seed. And then like as you grow, there's so many different like avenues you can go with this. But I think definitely knowing the industry you're in and doing your research, you know, like what does the market allow in your area? Because as many people are going to say, well, you set your price, you do this. Your market dictates a lot of what you can charge, regardless of where you are. You can charge $100 a mow all you want. You're going to get customers. You may not. So and then a lot goes into that where like, what's the scope of service that you're charging, you know, $40 for versus $100. But I would think definitely knowing your market. But as far as like legalities, one quick tip before I go to number 2 is that a lot of the information that you need from professionals, with the exception to lawyers, is typically free on a consult call with like CPAs, accountant, business managers. So like you could call around to like 3 CPAs and get some advice of like, hey, I'm going to start this lawn mowing company. You know, is there any advice as far as like how to keep the books? And they'll give you some ideas. And you know, typically it's like a 20 to 30 minute consult. You can go in there, you can call. There's also scores. I don't know how it is throughout the rest of the country, but the Northeast scores is essentially it's retired executives from companies, and they volunteer their time to upcoming entrepreneurs or small business owners to help you figure out how to run your business more efficiently, how to start a business. I know when I was younger and still living in Boston, down at Copley Square, they had a scores right outside the Prudential building where you could walk in on like Thursdays from like 11 to 4, and these guys would be in there and it would just pump you full of knowledge. Definitely check with your state to see what you're liable for in taxes, see what licensures is needed. Jensen, you know, in Massachusetts, we're a little bit more strict with how we operate. Like, for instance, to run any sort of machinery aside from like lawnmowers, you need a hydraulics 2A1C just for a skid steer or a forklift, pesticide license. You know, you do need workman's comp in Massachusetts. General liability insurance isn't that you don't need it, but obviously it's it's a happy state. So you want to make sure that whatever you're getting into, what sort of licensure you need. Hardscapers, a lot of you guys might need contractor or CSL licenses in certain states. So, you know, that's a big tell-all too. You know, if you're going to go start a hardscaping business and then you need a CSL or a contractor's license, like that's potentially like $5,000 to $10,000 startup cost right there, where you might want to look into maybe just work like subcontracting under somebody. What was that, 2? Did I even give you two answers there?
Yeah.
And then as far as like, repeat the question to me. Now I'm losing train of thought.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to ask Scott the same question after you too, but I would say the top 3 things, like legal resources that you would need to start your business when you woke up this morning. Hey, I'm going to start this business. What's the first 3 things I need to do? Top 3 things.
Well, so let me start. So let me start this over. If I knew what I knew today back then, what I would do, CPA. I would definitely call CPA. I would spend the $400 or $300 minimum and talk to an attorney and say, hey, listen, like, have you ever worked with landscape or lawn care? Like, what kind of contract could you write up for me that'll really save me some time and effort? Because I lost some shit not having the right verbiage in contracts. So like that $300 to $500 just to go into an attorney and talk to them and have them write up a few documents is it's priceless. It's what you'll make the money back. And then the Number three for me would be calling the state, or for us the Commonwealth, and just seeing what's in, like, what taxes are you subject to, if there's any licenses I need, workman's comp, things like that. Like what am I subject to as a business owner? Like, you realize too, like, if you have employees in this state, the different funds and taxes you pay out for are like every year it seems like there's like new small ones, especially like since COVID. There's always like these sub accounts of like COVID funds we're paying into. So those are probably the top three. If I had to tell a younger me right now what to do, I'd go that way.
Can I keep you on for a little bit more? I got another question for you. Just popped up.
That's what I'm here. That's why I'm on, baby.
Yeah. Because I want to get Scott's input too. But over the years, have you learned about any like grants or like free resources that's available? I know each state is different, but was like, I mean, I think that's probably huge. Especially with COVID, right? Because COVID started coming up with some crazy stuff.
So COVID did. So I actually applied and got PPP loans from my company. For people that don't know what payroll protection program. So essentially, if you kept people working throughout the pandemic, they would essentially give you up to 3 months of payroll to cover your expenses. Like, and we did have a couple of downturns in the beginning where like things slowed down. Like that March when things really hit the fan, we had like 4 months worth of work booked, and it like disappeared. So it helped. And then I guess the rule was like if you used it directly for payroll or business expenses, it was forgiven. So both of ours were forgiven. As far as grants, I don't know too much about grants, to be honest with you. We could essentially, I know a woman that I've done a panel with before. She knows a lot about grants, especially like women and minority grants. Those are usually more available. Out towards Scott, that might be more on the agricultural point. I know, like, if you go to the USDA website, I think depending on what type or how you're structured, again, how you're structured when you file for your FEIN number with the IRS has a big say on what type of grants you apply for. But resources, I've always been a person of free resources as much as possible. Like, obviously you got the god of almighty of all is YouTube, right? But locally, it's been like through like the site ones, the paver manufacturers, like the free classes. I was in automotive before this, and I did the same thing. When like Vendex or anything had like a seminar, I would be there front and center. And a lot of it was like, it was marketing propaganda, and it was like, but still you learned a little bit, like Cambridge Pavers, Teco, Nicoloc. I've gotten to a lot of seminars with them. And through those seminars, I've met a lot of like OG guys, like guys in their 60s that I've been able to pick their brain. And they're at the point where like, they just want to spit education and shit, So those resources to me are priceless. Like, they take time. They don't cost you anything. You're going, I'd have to think more if there's anything, but like there's not much on forms of like grants for equipment or anything. If you're a woman owned or a minority owned business, there's a lot out there. There's a lot out there for you that you can explore. And I can't remember the woman's name on the top of my head, but Scott, maybe you can link up with her and either have her on this one or have her on yours. She is just like a fucking encyclopedia of knowledge. And there's stuff out there that she was saying that I'm like, God damn, like that's so smart. And I remember, like, if you're a minority in this industry, make sure that you apply for minority owned business, because there's a lot that can help you out the gate with it. There ain't nothing wrong with it. It's not a leg up. It's whatever. There's a lot. I'm like bids, federal, municipal, like all that stuff. A lot of these loans and these grants you can go for, they're there. Like, take advantage of this because it's fucking huge, man. It's fucking huge. And Squat, I'll give you her name and have her on, because dude, I tell you, she'll spit a world of knowledge at you guys, and even having you like, boom, wow, holy shit. You guys will be asking your wives to like go 50-50 on the fucking business to get that woman-owned certification. Not the complete answer you're looking for, but I don't know, like the grants. For me, it was really just like the biggest resource was just being out in the industry, being out in the environment, meeting local guys, like these get-togethers or whatnot, and then kind of like bouncing things off each other. Like, and it's funny, it's like being like a 38-year-old business owner. Like, I have guys that have been in business since before I was born calling me, asking my opinion, just because of how the environment of employees has changed, and they're asking me stuff. Like, I had a guy yesterday that called, and like, it was so cool to have a guy that's like, he was legit in business a year before I was born, calling me and say, hey, listen, I need your opinion on this. So this is good. That was kind of cool. But this guy has also spit a wealth of knowledge at me. So like, that shit right there is priceless.
What about you, Scott?
There's a lot. The top 3 things I would say if you're going to get into business, any type of business, is the insurance. Insurance is going to be a key, because I mean, there's so much when it comes to insurance that, especially like us with our green industry, you got to worry about equipment, you got to worry about trucks, you got to worry about there's cyber hacking going on. There's so much there that you have to worry about, that you got to make sure that you're covered all the way across the board. Especially if you're in snow removal. Some companies, I'll tell you right now, there's a lot of companies out there that have vehicle insurance, but they might not have the special coverage for when you go to snow removal. So if you don't have that insurance in place and you're out there plowing and you actually hit a building, you might think you're covered, but it's just your vehicle that's covered. So you got to make sure that you have that specialty insurance in. So having the insurance is top key on my 3. And then the next thing would be to make sure you're licensed in the state. Make sure you go through, find out what licenses you need. Like Josh said, each state is different. Here we have to have a license for planting plants, for planting plants, and there's a lot of companies in our area that don't have that license, and it's a nursery license. You have to have a nursery license, and you got to know exactly everything that you're planting, where it's coming from, because even though you're grabbing it from a different nursery and going and planting it, it's still transporting it. You're still transporting it. It can come up with insects, it can come up with diseases. You got to know exactly what you're getting into. So there's different, licenses that you need to make sure that you're, have in place. Make sure that if you're going to go with sole proprietor or LLC, look into that, get that as your main thing first before you even go into any other licenses. And it might cost you, a couple grand right off the bat, but at least you're licensed in the right way. You're going to go top right off the bat. So licenses, insurance. And then the next thing is to really sit down and actually know your numbers. I mean, that's, to me, I feel like if you want to know exactly where you're at, you got to know your numbers, and you got to know exactly how much it's going to cost you. And if you don't know how much your insurance is going to cost you, you don't know how much you're going to need a phone. Okay. You're going to need a phone. You're going to have to advertise. So you got to have some kind of a marketing advertising budget. You got to know exactly what you want to pay yourself, what kind of maintenances you need. There's different things that a lot of people don't realize what they need right off the bat, and they just go right into it because, hey, I got a 20-inch, or I got a rider, I got a trailer, I can go ahead and pull around, and that's awesome. You can go ahead and do that. And I'm not, frowning on anybody that does that. Okay, there's plenty of people that do that. It's just know everything. Yeah, know everything right off the bat if you can. Okay, and like Josh said, talking with other lawn companies, other people that are in your business, no matter how long they're in business, it's good to bounce numbers off of. It's good to bounce, hey, this is going on. Okay. I'll be for frank as pretty much as I can, is that there's a lot of younger guys in this area, in my area, that they'll come to me and they'll say, hey, where you're buying mulch at this year, what's the price of this colored mulch? Okay. We kind of bounce back and say, okay, this is what's going on. This is what I'm going to charge per yard. What are you charging per yard? And then it's like, okay, now we know exactly where our numbers are. Are we close? Are we not? Everything's different. And just because one person might charge 150 per yard for mulch, their numbers might be higher that they need to hit before they get to that number. But my numbers might be lower. It all depends on what you need to make your bottom line. So knowing that is a main topic for me. So definitely know everything, network as much as you can with anybody and anybody in your area. So
can I jump in one more little piece there? And one thing that I think would be helpful, again, if I had to tell the young in me, is to document your production rates by yourself. So first year in business, if you by yourself, so production rates are a thing. Fortunately for lawn and landscape, there's not necessarily a book that tells you how long it should take. But if you're doing a yard of mulch in 45 minutes consistently throughout the year, you know that a yard of mulch should be moved within an hour. So you can kind of base your numbers, like what your production rates of what you should charge based off that. So you know if it takes an hour to run a yard of mulch, on with your truck being, you got to consider how far away your truck is too. Truck's 50 feet away, and it's taking you an hour to go back and forth and lay this mulch. Just lay it, nothing else. You know that, hey, 5 yards is going to take you 5 hours. If you're paying a guy $30 an hour to go do that, you kind of get a basis that way of how long they should take. And obviously, you want to consider that, like, no one else is going to do it as good and as fast as you, right? So no one's going to be as efficient as you. So that's why I say if it takes you 45, bounce it up to an hour, then you have that. So documenting your production rates is huge, because then you know exactly how long things should take based off you doing them personally. And if you got a guy that does them faster than you, great. You're probably not going to find that, but great. But at least you have a basis of, like, okay, it takes me, I don't remember what it takes to cut a lawn. It takes me 45 minutes to cut an acre, right? Without any obstructions or having to go around anything. You get an idea of how long it should take a guy that's out there with your truck. And then you start filtering, like, the fuel, the idle time, the windshield time, and all that. So documenting how long things take. It's tedious, but I never did it. And I kind of had an idea of how long things should take me, but to actually have the facts in front of me that, like, wow, yeah, my yard of mulch is this, yard of mulch is this. This is like, so I'm in the hardscape industry. They say that one guy should be able to screed and lay 200 square foot of pavers per day. That's based on a 9 to 5 day, and the pavers being within walking distance. So example, we do some new development work that's paid per square foot. And if I feel that the scope of work doesn't fall within that square foot, I have to approach the general contractor, the architect, and say, hey, look, it doesn't fit. So one of the last jobs we did last year was literally going over unfinished grade with, we couldn't drive skid steers over it. So everything had to be moved with 2-wheel dollies. And these were slab pavers. So I go, how the hell do you think that, the price you're paying us falls into having to walk 100 feet through, like, rough terrain, almost like a safari, when you're taking the stuff across? So that doesn't fall within normal production rates. So normal production rates should be something you like, you jump out of your car, you drop your trailer deck, you pull your mower out, you're able to mow your lawn, weed whack, and you're in and out of it. Those are what production rates. They're made off best case scenario. So definitely document how long things take you, and be real with them. Like, if that yard of mulch takes you, an hour all year, and then you have 4 or 5 jobs that take you 2 hours, why? Were you going uphill? Were you going this? And then you know how to factor the extra time. We're like, oh, you know what? Scott and Jensen have to run two wheelbarrows up a 20-degree slope. It's wet out, blah, 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 blah.
Very good. Very good. I think that's definitely anymore, especially if you get a CRM. I mean, you can document that stuff. You can document by time. You can clock in and out. And that's something we've done in the past, and we're pushing more this year to it, to document every job, to know exactly how long it takes throughout the year. And then we average out the actual price. So that way we can make sure that the next year your numbers are totally correct on that job. And I feel like every job should be documented hour-wise, so that way, 1 year you might use, say, 4 yards. The next year you might use 4.5 yards of mulch. If you know exactly how much you're using, how long it's taken, it helps you prepare for the next season and be able to sit down and say, okay, this is how long it took us this year. What was the reason? What, did I get rid of a guy? Did I, was it slower? Was it hotter? If you have all that information, it's going to help you out in the long run.
Just a key phrase here too, so guys know, because this pisses me off. When you were talking profit, the profit after a job is what's left in your account when there's nothing else to be paid. Where if that $100 is profit, that $100 can sit in that account for 3 months and never been paid. It doesn't. It's not. I made 50% profit, but I still have to pay the lawnmower nut at the end of the month. No, those nuts should be built into that overhead cost at the beginning of the year or the end of the prior year when you're actually making your budgets. And we can talk about that another time. Actually, how to formulate your base hourly rate.
Yeah. Anything else, Josh or Jensen? You guys got?
I'll shut up.
I'm letting the experts speak. I'm no
There's
expert.
no expert here. Not on this little square. Not on this thing. Yeah.
In
No.
my eyes, you two are.
Yeah. It's not me. It's not me.
But it's a lot of mistakes made. That's what I'm gonna say, dude. Like when I say like I've put my head down on the table enough times, dude. Like I've like learned from mistakes is exactly what I fucking did. And I am the type of person, if you hear me not shutting up here, I ask 1,000,001 questions. I'm the type of dude that like the old timers would turn around and be like, dude, will you shut the fuck up? Like go away. Stop asking questions because I want to know. Like when I want to know something, it's like I gotta know, like, but why? Why do you cut the grass at 3 inches? Because it does, prevents diseases. Blah, blah, blah. But why? But why do you do that? Why? And it's like, but I got to know everything. Like I want to know.
Sitting next to Josh on a plane, you walk out feeling like Goodwill Hunting.
Interesting. So, well, this was a great episode, guys. So this is so much information here to listen to. And we got plenty more, guys, from here on out. So I want to thank you guys for listening. Josh, Jensen, I want to thank you guys for being on. If you guys ever really want to comment on it. Send us, put a like on this, comment on it. We're on YouTube. We're on iHeart. We're on Spotify. You can comment. We'll get back to you guys. Definitely. So comment. Let us know what your thoughts. Hit us up we're all three on Instagram. So we'll definitely talk to you guys. Just, don't get Josh on his phone because he'll just nonstop talk. So, I mean, I literally have to shut him off sometimes. So, but definitely contact us if you guys have any questions. So that's all I got for this episode, but be ready for another episode, guys. Thank you guys for being on and have a great day.